Welcome to Disambiguation. I'm your host, Michael Fauscette. Each week, we interview experts in artificial intelligence, generative AI, and business automation to help business leaders understand how to use these tools for the biggest business impact. In our show today, we're going to do something a little bit different, or something that I don't do that often, I guess I should say. We're going to take a look at potential disruption of enterprise applications in the SaaS business model by AI. And this came from from a conversation that I had this week. I was at this event called In Real Life IRL 2025, put on by the CRM players and the Player Production Network in Atlanta. And I was on a panel, and one of the idea of it was a random question. Well, I guess it wasn't random, but a question that we didn't know ahead of time that we could react to. And essentially the question was about this potential for disruption in the enterprise application world and SaaS too. And to be honest, I'd been thinking about this for a while. And so anyway, I just wanted to run through a few things. And we don't normally do a monologue, usually do an interview. If you're if you're a regular to the show, you know that. I mean, I have done a couple of monologues, but in this case, I just want to walk through a few things that I've been thinking about, share those with you, and then if you're interested, reach out or leave some comments. Would love that. Um, so we're going to dive into this topic that I think has been on the minds of a lot of people in enterprise tech, and that's this idea of the potential disruption of enterprise apps and SaaS by AI, generative AI, and lately agentic AI. So I thought it'd be interesting if we took a look at those technologies, kind of set the stage a bit, and then walk through some of the potential disruptions that we might see, and maybe what we think the future of enterprise software might look like or could look like. So if you think about SaaS, and this was actually one of the areas where you see a lot of pushback on this. Is the SaaS model being disrupted in some way? But we've been at this for late '90s. I guess I was at a startup that was in what we called an ASP, application service provider model, which was essentially just SaaS. And of course, we got smarter over time, and we called it SaaS, and then we called it cloud and infrastructure and PaaS, and all those different things, right? But these have been the foundation, and if you think back historically, they were experimental, new, people were piloting and all until 2007, 2008. And some of that was, mainstream push from the financial crisis, and from the idea that I didn't have capital expenditures. I needed to do it out of my operating budget. SaaS is subscription, it's monthly, it's operating budget, so there was certainly a change in the way companies thought about it. And for several years now, um, almost all companies, I would say all companies that are using some kind of technology, some of it, if not all, is in that SaaS model. And enterprise applications and SaaS have been the foundation of digital transformation, and we've talked about that. I'd say we're in, I don't know, maybe the third generation of digital transformation now. I don't know, but we've talked about that for years. And then tools companies like Salesforce, Oracle, Zoho, many others that have used those tools to streamline workflows, centralize data, and enable collaboration in a remote workforce. Pandemic certainly changed and pushed us remote and changed the way we interact, and we had a lot of new tools, etc. But the playbook for SaaS, it is starting to evolve. And I would also say that hybrid, which kind of was not at the forefront of most people's conversation in the past 5-10 years, has become something that is much more top of mind. And AI, we've certainly for the last 2 years, and if you've been involved in tech, AI has been around for a long time, and a lot of applications for years have had some capabilities, whether it's using machine learning or deep learning, neural networks, predictive algorithms. We called it predictive analytics, but that's all AI. All of those things have been around for a while, but the last couple of years, the disruptive force has accelerated greatly, and in fact, the innovation cycle is very compressed. It's always a little compressed or exponential in tech, but this time it's even more extreme, and things are changing very, very rapidly. And I mean, I joke sometimes, but maybe it's not a joke, that I get up every morning and I check to see kind of what's happening in AI and AI evolution today, or what have I learned that's happening today anyway. I think these forces as a disruptor, generative AI, agentic AI, they're poised to challenge the very design of the delivery of, and even the business models of SaaS. And why? Because they don't just focus on processes or process optimization. They redefine the way you interact with the applications, and the way you interact among yourselves, with your customers, et cetera. And because of that compressed innovation cycle, businesses, are they keeping up? I'd say no. Do they feel a bit overwhelmed? Yes. And I guess the aside to this too is that I hear a lot of discussion among analysts, and I'm an advocate for the technology. I'm not a naysayer, but I do hear a lot of people go, well, it's not delivering value. It's this, it's that. It's hype, and hype is always one of those things that we love to talk about as analysts, right? Oh, there's tons of hype, and there is. I mean, certainly marketing is marketing, and maybe hype is hype. I don't know, but underneath that, there's real capabilities, real value. And a lot of times, if you think about using technology and it not providing the value you wanted, or the project failing or whatever, a lot of that has to do with not having clearly defined use cases and a change management plan and an implementation plan, and approaching this in a very structured way. That's always been the case with tech. I mean, I started my career in tech doing implementation work and services. And, back then, what did we think? Well, same thing, right? If you don't approach this in a structured way, then there's a great risk. And especially, what's the old Stephen Covey line, begin with the end in mind? That's really critical when you think of technology. Begin with the end in mind. All right, so let's talk about this. What makes AI a disruptor? Well, first, let's make sure we have clear definitions of some of these things. And honestly, we've been talking about generative AI for the last couple of years. And if you listen to this podcast, I don't need to explain it to you, but just to level set, I'll give you a quick introduction. Generative AI is, in its simplest form, technology that creates content. Could be text, could be images, could be code. That's actually one of the bigger areas. I know I read recently, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Alphabet, said that 25% of Google's code is now developed with AI. If the CEO thinks it's 25%, I'd be willing to bet it's a little more than that, maybe 40%. But it doesn't matter. The point is, a lot of companies are using AI to generative AI to generate code. And even consumers and the applications that came out, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Stable Diffusion, Anthropic's Claude, Google's Gemini. I mean, all of these different models popped up, and a lot of people, consumers, B2C, started playing around with it, using it for different things. And it is transformative, creates, new content, and it helps you with analytics, analytical tasks. You can upload data and have it help you, find patterns, that sort of thing. So I, it is transformational, and I believe that. I use it quite often. Anyway, so let's go on to talk a little bit about agentic. So agentic is the newest kind of push over the last 6 to 8 months, I guess. I mean, Salesforce has certainly come out with Agentforce, and they've been pushing a lot, and a lot of other companies have come out. I mean, OpenAI just announced their agentic AI. And agentic, unlike traditional AI, it doesn't rely on explicit instructions. And this is really where it's different, right? So agentic, when I hear the word, I originally sort of thought, oh, agents. Well, no, agentic is actually, really the idea behind naming it agentic is that it has agency. It has the capability to operate autonomously. It can look at a situation, make decisions, execute tasks, act as a dynamic agent within a digital ecosystem, and essentially, a multi-agent deployment becomes a digital workforce. It's an addition to your human workforce that needs to be managed and has great potential there. And then the underlying technology, especially for generative AI, and I'm sure you've heard of this, is large language models, LLMs, and that was the hottest conversation over the last couple of years, and frankly, that's where a lot of the innovation is happening and has happened over the last couple of years. So what's happened? Well, it's not just large language models anymore. Language models, they are evolving. So you see now right sizing the models as a concept. So maybe I want to run something on my local laptop. A small model works for what I need. Maybe I want to run on my phone. A small model is what I need. A mid-sized model is what I need. Balancing performance and resource efficiency. So that, we hear a lot of pushback that generative AI, particularly language models and training language models, requires, massive amounts of resources, and that's true. But there are ways to help mitigate that. One of those is sizing the model correctly for what your use case is. And I'm not going to take you through all the reasons there, but certainly something that we could talk about, and maybe I should plan a future show about that. And then we've also seen industry specific models and functional models, right? So specialized models designed for healthcare or financial services or customer service or marketing or whatever. And so that enables the use case that is, tied to that specialized data model, and changes. You don't need a model that's trained on everything. You need it trained on the things that you're going to use it for, you're applied to, right? Behavior models, we've seen this is a new one that really started to evolve last year. AI systems that can emulate and predict user behavior for enhanced personalization and engagement. LBMs, they're being called. That's an interesting evolution of the technology. It takes a language model that's been trained normally or traditionally. I guess that's kind of funny to say traditionally around something that's evolving so quickly, but and it applies the training routine. Also applies that to human behavior, so that it starts to have the capability to recognize behaviors, predict outcomes, that sort of thing. Action models, that's directly related to the idea of agentic AI. We want AI that can take action, not just generate content. It's focused on executing specific tasks or autonomous workflows, and they bridge decision making and action taking. So, we talked a lot about using AI for decisions, yes, but now we're talking about having AI make the decisions in an autonomous fashion and take action. That can be significant depending on where you've applied that. Liquid foundation models, and this is not the only word for it, but basically several companies are working on this. Liquid, an AI startup, has been working on this, and that's where the liquid label came from. But I mean, OpenAI and Google, all the rest of them are certainly looking um, at this, and developing, working on tools that are dynamic. So the idea for liquid foundation models, LFMs, is dynamic learning and evolving the model over time. So rather than having to train on this massive data set, consume all those resources, you build a model that you can train, but it learns over time. So the training is an ongoing process, and a process that helps it evolve to stay relevant and effective. So it's a very interesting area, and it's certainly something that could be extremely important um, as more and more models start to look at that and come out with those types of models. Reasoning models, this was a big one. I know a lot of you've heard of this. Um, it's designed for complex problem solvings, and basically the idea with reasoning models is for them to show the work. How do you get to this? Whatever the question is, how do you get to that outcome? And in these models, it goes beyond pattern recognition to logical deduction and inference. So, like ChatGPT's O1, and then I think the latest one's O3 models. Those are behavior models. They show the our reasoning models, I should say. They show their work, and you can see the logic that they go through to get to whatever the answer is that they provide you. So, with all those new capabilities, you get systems that can automate workflows end to end. They could enhance decision making with real time insights. They could personalize interactions. And we talk about personalization a lot, but this is really important. And it's something that your customers and your employees will want and want to see, evolve as a capability. And then take independent or autonomous action. That's a big one. And that gives you capability to deploy these models, use them in a lot of different ways that we wouldn't have been able to. So the result, it's a fundamental shift in how enterprise applications could deliver value. So what's being disrupted? Well, why don't we look at there's three areas I think that are useful to look at. The first one, user experience and user interface. And that shouldn't surprise anybody. Traditional, SaaS, traditional enterprise applications are, dashboards and forms and reports and, tables and that sort of thing, right? But with generative AI and advanced language models, you can change the way that your users interact with that software. So, for example, conversational interface. So, employees could interact in a natural way, with voice, with the application. Reduces the learning curve, enables more intuitive access to more complex systems, and it even includes the data. So, the idea of having a conversation with your data to get to insights is a very different thing than going to data analyst or data scientist and having them, parse through data and give you things to look at. This is something that you can drive yourself. It democratizes the use of that. Context aware personalization, we mentioned personalization already, but AI dynamically adapts, interfaces, recommendations based on behavior. We talk about behavior models, preferences, and real time context. And this makes every user's experience unique and efficient. Proactive assistance. Applications equipped with reasoning models could anticipate user needs, offering insights or actions before the user even requests them. For example, a project management tool might automatically identify and prioritize bottlenecks in the workflow. So in effect, it changes the user interface into something that's from something that's static, which is what we're used to something that's reactive to dynamic, and it's predictive. Um, so that's a very different way of interacting with systems, and frankly, it seems like a much more natural way to interact with systems. If you're my age and you are an old Star Trek fan, you'll remember the episode where where they end up on old Earth, and Scotty's talking to a mouse, trying to make it, interact with him in a natural way, a voice way. And I think this is something, that was what in the '60s. So that was something. This is something we've wanted for a long time. This idea of natural interaction. Then there's automation and efficiency. Agentic AI can handle, end-to-end processes with very little human intervention. Fundamentally operates, changes the way that we think of operational efficiency and productivity. Examples could be integrated workflow automation. Ooh, that's a hard one. Integrated workflow automation. Instead of siloed task automation, agentic AI connects disparate systems and orchestrates this seamless workflow. So, for example, in a supply chain application, it could monitor inventory. It could take data that shows how demand has changed based on behaviors and based on past transactions, and then take that and turn that into predictions that that give you that understanding of what you might need, right? So it takes that and then would order and change your inventory to adjust, procurement autonomously to meet that demand. So monitor inventory, predict demand, monitor demand, adjust procurement autonomously, and get what you need to stay, in business. Right. Error mitigation. If the system could look at patterns, anomalies in real time. AI agents can proactively address potential issues, such as preventing cyber attacks or avoiding compliance violations. Or, learning from data systems. Liquid foundation models are from data streams. Liquid foundation models enable applications to continuously learn from new data, from real-time data, which ensures that the processes remain optimized even as things change. So rather than I have to retrain the model, or I'm giving the model more context through things like RAG and that sort of thing, the system actually learns and learns continuously, so it evolves. Not that you don't need RAG in that environment, but it's a different type of way to think about it, right? Um, and so, the level of automation isn't just about saving time, but it really does enable organizations to scale without proportional increases in complexity or cost. I mean, there's tremendous value in that. And then lastly, I mentioned this a little bit already, but business models and pricing. AI doesn't just disrupt how SaaS delivers value, it changes how value is monetized. So I was last summer, I was at a Zora event in San Francisco, and Zora is a subscription management, revenue management platform, and there was a lot of conversation around how how AI and using AI in enterprise applications is starting to disrupt the subscription business model. So, for example, outcome-based pricing. Organizations could transition to models where they pay for measurable results, whatever the application be. So let's say it's in customer service, you pay for cost savings, or you pay for resolutions, or you pay for, if it's sales, you pay for revenue growth. A marketing platform might charge based on ROI generated from AI driven campaigns. And then you could have usage-based models, so outcome-based, usage-based. So this is common. A lot of companies have used this model. Salesforce applies this token. The idea of buying tokens, paying for usage metrics such as volume of data, or task, or interactions, those kinds of things. And then new revenue streams. SaaS providers could offer AI, as standalone products. They can monetize access to proprietary reasoning models, specialized reasoning models, like we talked about. So it makes pricing more flexible, and we need to align it more with customer outcomes, which could increase adoption and satisfaction. Some vendors are adding capabilities without changing pricing, though. So this is another part of it. Could I inside of my applications, can I build enough capability in here that it makes it compelling in a competitive marketplace, but at the same time, my back-end infrastructure and business model lets me not charge as much, or charge for Oracle's like that. They, OCI, or Oracle, infrastructure, they can scale that much more rapidly and with less cost, because they have that. Zoho's the same way, right? Zoho doesn't charge for their new AI capabilities. It's built into the product and continues to evolve and being built in the product. So you can see there's a lot of opportunity there, but but with opportunity, of course, comes challenges. So disruptions, challenges, they go together. Data and privacy. I mean, those have been top of mind for a while, and in other reasons too. I mean, we had a lot of regulation around it, GDPR, CCPA, and you have to be sensitive to the information and making sure that that information remains secure, that you remain compliant. And because AI relies on large data sets, there's certainly some issue around data governance, and there's even been a lot of conversation around the fact that the large language models, anyway, a lot of them have been trained on massive data sets across the internet. They haven't particularly protected or understood what was IP, what was intellectual property that needed protection, and maybe that helps disrupt some of the monetization of some of those content providers. I mean, I know there's a New York Times is a big lawsuit against OpenAI around that, and then there've been others. So that's not a new subject, but in general, data privacy and security, very important. And then IP protection, how you monetize it, that sort of thing, those are going to change. And I mean, if you think about the streaming world of music, how much did that change the way we pay for or the way musicians make money as more and more people stream, less and less people buy DVDs? Maybe they buy albums, but not as many. So anyway, has changed. Integration complexities. I mean, as we move to talking about agentic AI, and obviously that's where a lot of the value is going to come, I think. SaaS platforms are, deeply embedded in enterprise architectures. So, but there's a lot of different systems, disparate systems. Most companies have multiple systems across their business, and that in itself isn't that easy to integrate. But when you start to talk about adding autonomous agent or agents and giving them the capability to take action, they're going to need access to all sorts of data sources and all sorts of systems to do that. Like that supply chain example I gave you a little while ago, I need access to inventory. I need access to transactions, volumes, historical and current, real time, and then I need access to order management system, logistics, all those different tie-ins to get to get something and get it to where it needs to be so that it meets whatever demand I have. Right. So integration, very important. And then lastly, and this is being talked about a lot, is talent. AI requires some new skills, and from data scientists and AI ethicists, those are certainly, obviously data scientists have been around for a while, but extremely important. And then just talent shortages in general that could slow down development, slow down adoption, slow down use, and just making sure that that your employee base is in fact trained on this, that it does understand. So I went through and I built kind of a checklist of sorts, and I should probably publish this at some point on the website. Anyway, let's talk through this. So, what should businesses do now? Well, I think the first thing is AI literacy. So you have to make sure that your leadership and your workforce are trained on AI fundamentals, including capabilities, limitations, and even ethical implications. Provide hands-on training so that teams learn to be comfortable with it, to experiment with the tools that are relevant to their roles. Now, this is not a new statement, and like I said, I've been implementing software for a long time. Start small and scale strategically. I would say start small and identify high impact use cases that have less risk to pilot some of these solutions before you roll them out into other areas that might be more critical. Customer support chatbots have been around for a while, but these new ones, the intelligent ones, are are a significant improvement. Um, and they can change your customer service experience greatly. So that's a great area for the use of them. Predictive analytics and sales. I mean, we've talked about that for a while. Lead scoring and picking the best deals, the best opportunities, et cetera. So all those things, could be good use cases to focus on at first. Measure results, use insights to refine and scale the AI deployments across other functions. So once you learn, then take what you've learned and roll that out across the business in other ways. Collaborate with vendors and with system integrators, ecosystem partners, analyst firms, whatever you need to get the help that you need to make sure that you're picking the right use cases, you're picking the right technology, and that you're implementing it correctly, training your people, going through the change management that you need, all those things. Uh, Vendors can certainly help. You can push SaaS vendors to prioritize AI. A lot of them already are. I suspect all of them are or will be soon. And partner with the specialized AI startups if you need very specific functionality that'll augment or complement based platform. So, there are a lot of new startups. I mentioned Liquid with their Liquid Foundation model. There's a lot of others. There are a lot of different startups that could help you in very specific, particularly industry specific use cases or functional specific use cases. And then lastly, join communities, join industry organizations, forums to try to stay updated on best practices and innovation. And this is the hard one, frankly. Um, I do a weekly newsletter to try to help stay up with some of that, but that's certainly not nearly enough. It evolves very, very quickly. And redesign processes around AI. I mean, as we think this through around use case, and I use that often. You need to focus around the use case, evaluate the workflow that you're using today, and then find the opportunities where AI can enhance efficiency, accuracy, maybe make it scale faster, better. Um, Use AI to eliminate bottlenecks, reduce manual intervention, and improve decision-making processes. So I wrote a report last year about decision intelligence. Decision intelligence plus some of these new capabilities like agentic really becomes an important opportunity for businesses to automate things that need to be automated that don't really need human intervention so that you can have your workforce focus on the things that do add the most value to your business and to your customers. Focus on ethical AI deployment. Establish clear guidelines to ensure AI is used reasonably, responsibly, transparently. Transparency is an important word around AI. Conduct regular audits so that you can identify and mitigate any biases or unintended consequences. Data sets have inherent bias in them, and you have to have strategies to mitigate that. Build a robust data infrastructure. I think that goes without saying. I mean, we know that AI relies on this data. Now, one of the nice things about it is we also see some AI tools that are evolving to help us do that better too. So there are ways to automate and make that a bit more manageable. Um, Develop a strategy for governance, compliance. What are your regulations? That varies by geography, state, federal, country, et cetera. Um, so that you make sure you stay aligned with regulations, particularly around privacy and data, security. Foster a culture of innovation. I mean, that sounds a little bit cliche, but the truth is, um, you really do have to foster this idea, encouraging cross-functional collaboration, and having leadership focus on those use cases that have the greatest potential. Share success stories. That's important. Make sure that from a change management perspective, the more people understand the success of and how things became successful, the more likely they are to support that going forward. Recognize and reward teams that are doing experimentation that delivers measurable results, measurable outcomes. Plan for a workforce transformation. Yes. Upskill employees, of course, to work alongside AI. I mean, as we see more and more agentic AI, we're going to see more and more human machine collaboration. Roles are going to shift. I'm not one of those that says, oh, AI is coming for everybody's job, but certainly it will eliminate certain types of roles, which means that you will have people that will need to be trained or upskilled and that sort of thing. So important to have on the roadmap to make sure that people understand how you're taking care of them. It isn't just a productivity play, but there's more to it. It's an overall business strategy. So what do we do going forward? Disruption to enterprise apps and SaaS, I think, isn't, it's not a long way off. Actually, last week in this conference, somebody asked, where would this be in 5 years, or will it take 5 years for it to be, for agentic particularly, to be disruptive in the enterprise apps world? And for one thing, this is not a on-off switch. It's an evolution, and transformations happen over time as more and more capabilities are used and rolled out, and more confidence builds, so that you see that you'll have challenges, but the opportunities far outweigh the risk. And So organizations that embrace AI strategically will make it through that disruption, and they'll thrive. And certainly from a productivity standpoint, from a user experience standpoint, employee experience standpoint, there's a lot of opportunity here. So to wrap up, I'll leave you with a question. How can your organization leverage AI not just as a tool, but think of it as a competitive advantage? Thank you for tuning in today. I realize this was a bit of a rambling monologue, so hopefully it makes some sense to you. But I really do appreciate it, and we will go back to the regular interview model next week. I'm actually headed out for a sugar CRM conference in San Diego, and I'm going to interview. Actually, excited about this interview. Their SVP of engineering, so head of development, about some of the things they're doing there. They have some very interesting applications of AI, so we'll talk about that. It's an update on what I did last year when I was in London. So if you saw that episode, then you'll want to take a look at this. It'll drop, for the next show. And then the week after that, I'm at Zoho, and I'll do the same thing. I'll do an interview there. So we'll be back to the regular format. I'm not shifting this to one big monologue every week. But like I said, I hope you enjoy this. Hope this makes you think a little bit about what's happening around the potential disruption of enterprise apps and of SaaS business models. And that's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining us. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the show. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review to help others find us. For more research on AI and other software, check out arionresearch.com. If you're an expert in AI, generative AI, or business automation, either as a provider or an end user, email your information to disambiguation@arionresearch.com. Don't forget to join us next week. Disambiguation is an Arion Research production. I'm Michael Fauscette, and this is the Disambiguation Podcast.